Welcome to Beyond Basketball with Brian and Stint. My name is Brian Rowsom, former Charlotte Hornets player and co-host, along with my partner, Miss Andrea Stinson, former North Carolina State Wolfpack Hall of Famer and WNBA player with the Charlotte Sting. Our guests today are Mr. Gil McGregor, former Charlotte Hornets broadcaster, former Wake Forest University superstar basketball player. Also, Mr. David Solomon, former coach from overseas and basketball historian. Trust me, Mr. Solomon knows a lot of basketball in the Carolinas, especially. So I'm happy to have both of those guys on with us today. Wanted to talk a little bit about, start out with what we had touched on early on one of the earlier podcasts, and that is the current state of the NBA. Gil, you've seen a lot of NBA basketball over the years. The ratings are down right now. The style of play, a lot of people are complaining that it's too many three-point shots. Everybody's kind of running the same type of offenses. Load management, players not playing like we used to every day. We wanted to play every day back in those days, but it's changed a lot now. What are your thoughts on some of these things?
Well, I've got a lot of thoughts on them. I think there's a lot that's nuanced about the issues that you bring up. I think the NBA tried to institute a different way of playing some years ago when they took a lot of the hand checking and things out of it. I had 1 year in the NBA, so I certainly wasn't a superstar player at that level, but I did have a chance to play. I played back in 1971-72 when there were only like 16 teams in the, playing. I just getting a call from my wife, and I'm just going to start. David, talk to her. There were 16 teams. And everybody still had to play 82 games, but you played people over and over again. And now you have a lot of issues around how the game is played. Again, you could hand check then, right. And some of the really good defenders would put their hand on your waist and they would dictate where you went, right or left on the court. They took that away. And they took that away so they would open up the scoring. That's the mentality that I believe probably has hurt the league, and that to me it makes it seem more like a video game than a real basketball game, all right? Yeah. But the load management part, I lean more towards the player, because if you play when you're not 100%, you get ridiculed and booed by not giving the best product on the floor. Right. So some players are saying, no, I could go out there and play, but I'm not 100%, I'm hurting, or maybe I'm injured, and I know there's a difference between being hurt and being injured. But if you don't perform at a certain level, the people who paid to see you play will have something to say about it. Now, the other side of the coin is that the game has become more entertainment than it has been the game for those who watch the game. While I was working as a broadcaster, the NBA was concerned, this is again back in the early 2000s, they were talking about building smaller arenas to only hold 15 to 16,000 people, raise the prices so they could make it be more like gladiators and stuff back in the Roman days. Because there were a couple of arenas, the Charlotte Hornets arena at that time. They built that arena so it would compete against the Dean Dome and also against the Palace in Auburn Hills, where they were going to have 23,000 people. And then they said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to get smaller, we're going to raise the prices. If you're making $500,000 a year or $600,000 a year or $40 million a year, which is where the money is, then you have to ask the question, if those guys can make that much money, then somebody can make more than that in order to pay them that much money. Yeah. And what you do with the product, how you try to dress the product up, or how you try to present the product to the paying customer, has to be something that is on your mind. I was watching your podcast and we talked about the different commissioners, how Adam Silver might be different from David Stern. One of the ways Adam Silver is different from David Stern that people need to remember, Adam Silver came out of marketing with the NBA. He was working for the NBA and deputy commissioner, but Adam Silver is a marketer. That's what he has learned to do. Whenever one of your guests, Kenny Gasson, was talking about how you had people with broken noses and stuff. One of the worst things that happened for the NBA was the malice at the palace, when they had a fight and players went up in the stands, and one of the players was Ben Wallace, and I think they called Ben Wallace in, and Ben Wallace told the commissioner, I ain't mad at nobody, I'm good. But what happened was that culturally, people started saying it's because you got too many black guys on the teams, too many black guys in the league. I've written a book called The Blind Truth, so I hope you don't mind me being on your podcast talking the blind truth, because I'm going to present the truth.
Yes,
and the New York Knickerbockers had another name that sounded a lot like Knickerbocker, but it wasn't Knickerbocker. And so the league was trying to figure out how to transform all of this. And that time, and I've heard, the discussion about the foreign players. But the foreign players, they do have a different system because nobody plays sports in college in Europe. You become affiliated with a club team, and maybe at 12, 13, 14 years of age, and you stay with that team as long as they want you with them, on through your adult, until they sell your license to some other team. But because you can't hand check anymore, because you're paying people so much money, because guys get ridiculed when they aren't 100%, all those things are nuances as to why you have a different product now. And the money that is being paid out in contracts to have you play on Wednesday night or Saturday noon, all of that goes into the equation of the NBA, and it's completely entertainment. I was really against the Governor's Cup, or this in-season tournament, until I heard how hard the guys were playing. And I bring how hard the guys was playing because I don't want the fans who hear this podcast or hear the games or watch the games to think that the guys are really being lax and not giving their best and not giving their product to people who do pay a lot of money. And I wouldn't want to take my family and have LeBron not play if I came to see LeBron play. I think there has to be some kind of regulations and communications on that. But I do understand players opting out of playing when they're not playing their best.
David, what do you think?
Well, I think the whole idea of an 82-game schedule unto itself diminishes the product. Now, we know that there are phenomenal athletes and tremendous basketball players that are generational to right now. But if you compare the European game to the NBA game, they're playing 2 games a week max, sometimes 3 when it's a cup series. But the NBA is a grind, and it may prepare players for playoff, the importance of a playoff. But if you compare the European game, which not just in the number of games that are played, but the fact, just the sheer number of games, means that the product, it's a cleaner product. There's more significance in every game. Every game counts. When you're playing a 40-game schedule, every game counts. And the relegation aspect, both of soccer and basketball, you're not playing for the first round draft choice. You're playing so your team doesn't go down to the lower division.
That's right, exactly.
So it is a different animal altogether. Everybody knows, we could go down the list of those players now who cut their teeth in Europe, and those European players who are making the difference right now, who started in a different system. They started in an academy system where, unlike AAU, where they play 3 games a day, they play 1 game a week. Tell you a quick story. I was in Croatia some years ago, and someone said, you should meet this terrific young coach in Zagreb. Zagreb is the basketball capital of a crazy basketball country. And he had won, his team, his 18 and under team, had won the national championship. They weren't the national team, but they were the equivalent of a high school team. They were 18 and under. And I went to one of his practices, and here was the takeaway. This is not a trick question. How many times a week did his team practice? They practice 11 times a week. They practice every morning, Monday through Friday, for an hour and a half before school. They came in an hour and a half to 2 hours after school. They gave them the weekend kind of soft. They play only one practice on Saturday, and Sunday be with your family. 11 practices a week in one game.
Yep.
What does that tell you?
That's right.
But I want to interject something, if I may. We were on the earlier podcast. You had someone was suggesting about coaching and suggesting about how the players that we see being successful in the NBA have been coached the proper way. I agree with some of that, but I don't want to do it with a broad brush. We still got some of the best coaches ever coached here in the States. And those coaches have gone over to Europe to do camps and show those coaches there how to play. I played on a championship team, first division, in Belgium because my teammate, a guy named John Heath, who played at University of North Carolina in Charlotte, to jump out the gym, we met with the coach one Saturday morning and we told him what we're doing isn't working. But what we want to do is tell you how we could play together and win, but we're not going to tell anybody that we had this meeting. And if you don't tell anybody that we had this meeting, you get the credit for it. So we changed how we played, we won a championship, and allowed him to have the credit. My Italy experience, I played against a star player named Dino Meneghini.
Yeah, he was legendary.
Legendary. But what the legendary Dino Meneghini told the federation, the Italian federation, y'all keep fouling me out of games, I'm not going to play on the national team.
Wow.
So they stopped fouling him out of games. Against who?
You.
Yeah.
Yes.
So believe me, it's not as washed as we say. There's some nuances about all of that stuff that come into play.
That is true. The load management bothers me only because I remember our assistant coach with the Hornets, Gil, Ed Badger.
Yes.
Told us one day in practice, he said, he mentioned the name Wally Pipp to me. I didn't know who Wally Pipp was. So Wally Pipp, Stint, was a former baseball player who played in the major leagues for the Yankees, got hurt or injured or sick or something, didn't play, and then
Miller Huggins, the manager, says, Garrick, take first base.
Lou Gehrig took his place. Lou Gehrig then played 2,130 games in a row. So in other words, another guy lost his job. So our assistant coach, Ed Badger, turned to me one day in practice. Somebody got hurt or something, and Ed turned around to me as I was standing there and said, Wally Pipp, and started laughing. And I looked at him, and I had to go back and look in the encyclopedia.
I had used that story.
Yeah, you see? And he said, and I said, Wally Pipp, oh, that's the guy that Lou Gehrig replaced. So it dawned on me what he was saying, though. You know, so if you sit out, you may lose your job.
You may not get back in.
And that used to be how it was, you know? It may not be quite that way these days with every team, but I know still that if you're a player and you don't play, you do open the door for another player to come in and play. Look at Jeremy Lin.
Yes.
What he did with the New York Knicks.
Right. Yes.
You know, someone got hurt, Melo was out, I remember. Lin got a chance to play, and then Linsanity was born.
But there has been a sea change because of cultural issues, because of social media. And I know, Gil, you can talk about your relationship with Sam Jones or Willis Reed. If you go back to that era of basketball, those guys came to play every night.
Yep.
Well, and I think you talk about the cultural aspect of it and the money aspect of it, even as the money has gotten down into college. And I don't have a problem with that, but with a certain amount of money, players will respond differently. If you kept playing hard so you could get to play, and I know I sat on a bench in the NBA, so when I got an opportunity to play, I played hard, but I also probably played very nervous because I didn't have but a few minutes.
That's right.
But if your money is guaranteed, now you're starting to think about that. And you had a financial manager that talked about working with athletes, but now he has a lot of money to work with athletes. I know that there's still some probably horror stories about athletes, but not like it once was, because they are making enough money now that unless they just go out and set it on fire or stick it up their nose or something like that, they're going to be okay, because, you know, people didn't make $40 million a year. When I played in the NBA, the first round draft choice of the Cincinnati Royals was a guy out of LaSalle University named Kenny Durrett. And I think he had a 3-year, he had a 5-year, $1.5 million. So he's making $300,000 a year. Not $2 million for a 5-year deal. And now you got guys making $40 million per year. And it's totally different, and how they will approach it. But the love of the game, the great Michael Jordan has a commercial about all those things that have changed. He said the one thing that hadn't changed is why you play.
That's right.
It's why you play. You love the game.
Should be for the love of the game.
For the love of the game.
Yeah.
And then every game you play hard, and you play every game that you can, and maybe you don't play when you're hurt, when you're injured, but you will play when you're hurt.
Yeah. That's a good point. Good point. David, as a coach overseas for a lot of years and taking touring teams like Stint does too overseas, what do you look for in a particular player? Let's say talent is equal in 2 or 3 different players. Is there something that might make you choose one player over another, a particular skill or mindset or anything like that?
Athleticism certainly gets people's attention. Your ability to make big plays, but your ability to blend and play is really, it's a team game.
Right.
It's not, it's certainly, and Gil can, from his perspective, talk about the role that the import player plays on a team. They're paying you money. Oftentimes they're paying you the most money of anybody. Not only do they expect for you to perform at a high level and lead the team, but they expect you to blend. If you're not a blender, if you're not a guy that can culturally embrace where you are, you've got to be off the charts to be able to sustain that, or you're on to the next stop, as we say, along the basketball highway. But those people, those athletes or basketball players who get the cultural part, who bond with their teammates, who connect with the community, they're embraced. So, it's that balance.
Right. That's
you
right.
know.
That's right.
And we all, we all know stories of players that have gone overseas and had great situations, but were absolutely unhappy. Other players who have had long careers because they were able to get it. Brandis Raley Ross, who I've worked with, who's a Charlotte guy, 38 years old, still playing, loving it, has the personality. Everywhere he goes, they love him in the gym, they love him in the community.
That's it. It's a game within a game for athletes a lot of times.
For me, when I played in Europe, I had a family. So you had to have more than one ticket to fly me over there, and you had to put me in a different kind of apartment. But I learned the language. I speak French fluently, and I showed myself willing to, as David talked about,
adapt to
become part of the culture. And so the trade-off was, he has more people, but he probably has less baggage.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, because when I started in France, I went to a team that just moved up. And so they were fighting to stay up. So I was there, I came over, I took the young lady's place, and they ended up sending her home and kept me. I was only supposed to be there for 2 weeks, but they saw how enthusiastic I was, how hard I worked. I was about 50 pounds overweight, got in shape, got ready, and they loved me. They brought me back the next year. The next year we played in the Ronchetti Cup, went to the Final Four. I mean, the city was ecstatic. They just couldn't believe it. And then they signed me back.
Because the management is not very good.
Exactly.
Right.
But while I was there, enjoyed every minute of it. They enjoyed me. We became a family. And they even kept the young lady that they traded me for. They even kept her there during the whole season. So it was like we all became a family. We all became, listen, we're not going back down to the second division. We're going to stay up. So they decided, okay, well, you helped us this year, well, we're going to move on and get somebody else the next couple of years. But it was okay, because I took my little baggage and I went on somewhere else. But it's just the fact, like you say, you become a family. You become a part of the community. I mean, everything. I won raffles. I won all kind of things just so they could promote the team. So it was a great. My first 2 years overseas, was ecstatic. Had a great time.
And what countries were you in?
I was in France.
Where in France were you?
Tarbes.
Okay.
It's a little city right outside of Paris.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it was just a little city that they had just moved up. And they brought me over, and I was like, okay, here's my opportunity.
Brian, can I tell a story about Stan?
Oh, God.
Yeah, please do.
Here's the story.
Let all that dirty laundry go out. Let it out.
Well, it's not that. It's not that. I saw one girls' high school game, and I went to see her play. I'm married to her cousin. And she was, and before we were married, she was telling me about Andrea Stinson. And so she was playing, and I went to a game, and I saw her make a move that I'd never seen many guys make. She took somebody to the basket and put it down here, and I was like, what? But the story has to do with summertime on Wake Forest campus. There were two guys who called themselves basketball players, and they wanted to play some pickup. And so they saw this young lady, and they thought okay, we'll play with her. But they didn't know who she was.
Yeah.
But the story goes, she dusted both of them. and they were so embarrassed that they left the gym and came to the cafeteria to get some meat before anybody saw it. But the word was out, and you saw them walking, she dusted both of them. And that's the story of Andrea Stinson. We're talking about, we've been talking about who the top 5 players from the state of North Carolina. And then we talk about people whose names sort of left out. People kind of leave Pete Maravich's name out, and
That's right.
and we talk about people now, Steph and
Chris Paul.
Chris Paul.
That's right.
But when you talk about, and Meadowlark Lemon too, but when you talk about the great players from the state of North Carolina, I don't think that there could be a list that doesn't have Lady Jordan, Andrea Stinson on it. That's just what I've got to
For
say.
sure, for
Thank
sure,
you,
for
thank
sure.
you.
And Stin, I know you said you grew up playing against guys a lot of times.
Dusting them.
In order,
All
yeah,
that
yeah.
She didn't
yeah.
tell you she dusted them.
They
They didn't know,
treat me
did
any
they?
That's
different.
right.
They didn't know,
No,
did they?
and they didn't know.
But it made the game easier for you when you played against other women, I'm sure.
Hey,
Though,
listen, I grew up playing with guys in my neighborhood, and they told me, listen, I went back, I went to play, they wouldn't let me play. So I go back again and back again. They said, okay, if you're gonna play, you're gonna be the best thing to ever come out of here. And that's what they molded me into that.
Yeah.
That was always in my head. And so when I went and played with the girls, if I could take those guys and shoot over them, there's not a girl in this world that can do
Absolutely.
anything with me.
Good point.
So that's how I played my career.
Yeah.
That's how I played. There's not a woman. The only reason this woman can stop me is because I let her.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's not a woman in this world that's gonna be able to do anything with me after I took my brother to the basket and scored.
Right.
There's no way there's a woman that's gonna ever slow me down.
Well, look.
And that was my mentality.
Think about that, because Michael Jordan had to play against his older brother Larry, and
Yeah.
he said that once he was able to beat Larry,
That's when he
felt
realized
like
he
nobody.
could
Yeah,
play.
he could play.
That's
you
it.
know, so
Nobody.
It does wonders
There
for you.
was not a woman.
Well, there's a saying, and I think that's where excellence comes from, is when you don't stop at the one thing that gets in the way of excellence. That's good enough.
Yeah.
And when you don't stop it good enough, then you can become
That's right.
excellent. And
Yeah.
that's what you are an example of. Andrea
I
Stinson.
have worked and I worked and it was all because of the love of the game.
The love of the game.
right.
The love of the game. That's it.
No, I loved it, but I was a little bit limited. I know we talked about some people who pull for other schools, but I'm a Wake Forest guy. But I do have one thing that remains for me. I played in the East-West All-Star game back in 1967. And I had 21 rebounds. Wow. Still the record.
Oh wow.
Hey,
Man, I
listen
should
to
have broke that record.
listen to that.
Dang, I
And that was in
should've tried
the
it.
East, All-Star game.
Yes.
So now think about that, where you're in an All-Star game, it's supposed to be fun, and you out there rebounding, doing the dirty work. Think about that.
Because I've learned that rebounding became fun for me, because I heard someone say, I think it was maybe you, right, Brian, that if you play good defense, you're going to play.
Yeah.
And if you're the best rebounder, you're going to play.
gonna play.
You might not start, but
That's
you're going
right.
to play. Because
That's
they
right.
got to go get someone to get the ball. And
That's
then
right.
I've got a philosophy of rebounding. So you rebound, that's the dirty work. But that's what teamwork is. I miss shots, so I want to clean up my own miss. And I used to have a problem if somebody else missed. Then I realized, but if I clean up their miss, I'm going to play.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
I'm
That's
going
right.
to play.
That's right.
So, and in life, with your relationships, somebody going to mess up in your relationships.
That's right.
So rebound your family
Yeah.
messes, and you're going to be a
That's
good
right.
person in your family.
Brian, I'm going to give you a little basketball trivia.
Please do.
There are 5 guys at Wake Forest who averaged a double-double in their career. The last one, Andrea, was a guy named Tim Duncan.
Right.
Okay? That was
94, 5, something like that.
94, 95.
Yeah.
Only 5 guys. The only player before Tim Duncan,
Gil McGregor.
Gil McGregor.
Gil McGregor.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
That says a lot right there. David, real quick, your top, you and Gil touched on this earlier, your top 5 basketball players ever
Impossible.
from North Carolina.
Impossible.
You got to narrow it down to 5, David. You got to give me 5. Just basically
From North Carolina?
Yes, from North
Or played in North.
I would say from North Carolina, not played at.
Okay,
ECU.
MJ, we got him off the table.
Okay.
4. Okay, who are the
Yeah,
next
4
4?
more. Okay.
All right, you got Worthy.
Okay.
You got McAdoo. You got Pistol Pete. We haven't even talked about the guards yet. We haven't talked about CP3. We haven't talked about Phil Ford. We haven't talked about Steph. And
You
what-
ain't mentioned David
David
Thompson.
Thompson.
You can't have
Steph
a
oh my God,
You can't have
that's
him.
9.
It's tough, isn't it? It's tough.
It's very tough.
Yeah, that's why I threw it out there because I knew you wouldn't be able to do it.
I know it's impossible.
And I can't either.
It's impossible.
Yeah, it is.
And then nobody say Buck Williams either, did they?
That's right. Rocky Mount, down my way. That's right. Gil, you were a broadcaster with the Hornets
Yes.
for 24
years.
24 years.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot of good Hornets basketball games. What was your favorite Hornets game of all time?
Wow.
I think I know. I think I know the answer.
Well, I tell you one of the games that, because I'm thinking of it as a broadcaster as much as the game itself. Now, I did a good calling of the game.
Okay, that's a good
When we beat the Boston Celtics, and Alonzo Mourning took a jump shot and made the shot, and my broadcast partner thought that the game was over. But it was, I don't know.
0.2 seconds left.
Yeah,
They put
but
it back. I remember that. I remember
it
that.
was long enough for them to make a play, but
Yes.
the play was you had to throw it in from out of bounds
Right.
at the rim.
Right.
And you had to dunk it in or
Right.
just.
Yep, tip it in.
And the reason that I had known about that, the reason that it's a pass from out of bounds, so it's not a shot, and you can't goaltend it. Otherwise, you hit the
Right.
ball when it's in the ceiling, it's not
Right.
going to count because it's goaltended.
That's right.
But because it was a pass from out of bounds, it wasn't considered a shot. You could goaltend it. And they tried to, but it didn't go in.
Yeah.
So it was a great shot by Alonzo. It beat the Celtics. It was probably the last time that the Chief and Parrish and McHale and those guys,
Yeah.
there was a changing of the guards.
right.
Alonzo
Yes.
was stepping into the limelight,
right.
but I was smart enough to make a call that had to do with a rule that you didn't. Now you hear them talking about it all the time now when they throw it at the rim. But the deal was it was not going to be considered a shot, so there could be no goaltending, and you could catch it over the rim and dunk it in, it would have counted. So that's my favorite call.
Brian, what you need to find out from Mr. McGregor is how he got behind the microphone in the first
Well,
place.
yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. How did you get into that, Gil? Because I know you were. I remember us being on the very first plane ride going to play our first preseason game as a Hornets team, and you were there right from the very beginning. How did you get the job?
Well, it goes back to that last question we talked about, the best players from the state of North Carolina, but the best players who played in North Carolina. And we talk about that, and a guy named Earl Monroe's name would have to come up at Winston-Salem State. I had a chance to do radio for the Winston-Salem State Rams. Earl was obviously gone, but the fact that I had a chance to do a season or two with Winston-Salem State and to be around the great big house games. So when it came time for the Hornets to have a team, they had to find a broadcaster. And they were placating, the Hornets were, Carolina. So they were going to use Phil Ford as the broadcaster. They actually sent him to broadcast school, and they had worked with him, and that was the plan. But Roy Williams left the sidelines as assistant coach to go to, I guess he went back to Kansas.
Went to Kansas.
Went to Kansas. And so Dean Smith called Phil Ford and said, would you come and be an assistant? And of course he gave the right answer, sure.
Sure.
So he left to go be the assistant coach at Carolina, and it really ticked the people who had tried to put all this into him off. So that opened the competition. And when they brought in the different people to try,
Right.
I came in and tried, but I had the Winston-Salem State Rams basketball behind me,
Right.
and my audition was better than anybody else's.
There you
And
go.
that's why I got the gig
Rest
with
is
the
history.
There we
Hornets.
go.
Rest is
Because
history.
of my relationship with HBCU, Winston-Salem State University.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I still have a lot of our games on all the TV games and everything, Gil. So whenever I'm bored, I might pop one in, and I hear you and Steve doing the broadcast. Man, it brings back a lot of memories. It really
Those
does.
are great memories for me, and y'all. And I'm sorry to keep talking, but you mentioned Kobe Bryant, and when Kobe died, my son, who's a writer, he writes for Sporting News. He's a really elite writer. He wrote an article about when we came back from the Lakers, and I brought him the Kobe Bryant uniform, and he said I had come off the trip, and he pulled open the bag and got the uniform, and then he went around New Orleans to find some purple sleeves and stuff, and he could be like Kobe Bryant. And when Kobe died, he came and sat in my arms as a grown man, and we just cried.
Cried. Yep.
Because, and I tell people, if I had a chance to buy one ticket and see Michael Jordan have one of his greatest games, or see LeBron James have one of his greatest games, or see Kobe Bryant have one of his greatest games, I'm gonna spend my money to watch Kobe have a Kobe Bryant game.
Right. That's right.
That's because it was ballet, it was art,
Yeah.
it was just another level seeing
Yeah.
him be himself.
Intensity.
Yeah.
It was the secret.
Yeah.
And he was really kind. My son was a ball boy, and Kobe was very nice to my son and my wife and me. He was a great individual as well as a great player.
Yep. Again, I can't believe it's been 5 years already, since he passed away.
Yes.
Man, time is
Yes.
Time
definitely
flies,
flying.
yeah.
Also want to say this too, and I know you remember this name, Bobby Fields.
Oh, man.
He passed
Oh,
away
wow.
25 years ago this
Yes.
month in a car accident
Yes.
near the old Coliseum on Tyvola Road. So
Bobby Fields was so very smart. Bobby Fields wanted to be a veterinarian.
that's right. That's right.
And I didn't realize until I found out it's harder to get in veterinary school than it is to get in med school.
I believe it.
Well, his daughter now is a registered nurse assistant. She just finished. I saw it on Instagram. Her mom and her was
That's
celebrating
right.
that.
And one of his daughters is the same daughter
Kirsten.
that played at
Yes.
Florida Gulf Coast University, right?
Yep,
She
that's
played
her.
college basketball
Yeah,
there. And I
that's
think his
her.
son played as well at a college also. So
Bobby was a great guy. I
Yes.
talked to Bobby about leadership. And one of the things when Bobby was in Cleveland, the general manager was a brother up in Cleveland, and he played for the Celtics. And he was talking about Bobby when Bobby passed, because Bobby was also he was a frat, but he wasn't a Q. He was an alpha because he was so smart. Because he was so smart.
Yep.
Bobby Fields.
Yes, indeed. So just wanted to give a shout out to those guys because they helped pave the way
They did.
for all the current NBA players that's playing today. And with that being said, I'll close this episode of Beyond Basketball with Brian and Stint. My special guest, Coach David Solomon. You also have a book that's going to be coming out.
We are
Down the road.
Yeah, but the book that is already out is
Yeah.
Mr. McGregor's book.
Yes. Please, real quick, if you don't mind.
It's called Blind Truths, and it has to do with some of the things that we've been talking about and some of the awareness of what's going on. And I love the name of the podcast, Beyond Basketball, because that's what we're talking
That's right.
about. We're talking about
That's
beyond
right.
basketball.
That's right.
And one of the things that I try to tell student athletes, although we got the NIL now and you got getting in the portal and all that, but if you're going to go to college, learn something. Not that they told you to go to class and you went because they told you, but find one of those classes or maybe even two of them and learn something
Yes.
so that you can take what you learned with
That's
you
right.
when you go where you go.
That's right. That's right. And I tell a lot of young athletes that, when you're speaking to them at camps and clinics and all that, you don't have to be a player just to be in the game. You can do other things. You can
That's
coach.
right.
You can be director of player personnel. You can be general managers. And like my friend Malcolm Coley said earlier on the podcast, you can do those jobs a lot longer than you can as a player.
Be a video coordinator. and then
Absolutely,
you
yeah,
can
and work your way up.
work
you know,
your way up.
yeah. I remember Bill Branch was with us with the Charlotte Hornets. He was the one that picked me up at the airport driving the van, and next thing I know, he's
GM.
player GM with the Denver Nuggets. So
Exactly
if you
right.
don't, if you're willing to grind and pay your dues, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
Blind Truths you can find on Amazon. So if y'all want to buy the book.
That's right. That's right. We sure will.
Well, I'm going to buy me one.
Exactly. Thank you guys again for
Thank
being
you,
here.
Brian. Thank you,
Brian.
Andrea.
So
I
much.
enjoyed it, really enjoyed it. We can talk about basketball and other things all day long. And we'll have you guys come back for sure. Absolutely. Stint, another great podcast with you. I appreciate everything. And we look forward to the next one. I hope everybody will, like and subscribe to the podcast as we continue to put out more content. Thank you again. This is Brian Rowsom, and we'll say thank you and goodbye for now.